I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow.
The decision was delivered without ceremony, yet its impact struck the palace like a constitutional thunderclap. King Charles had issued a direct written order, forbidding Camilla from using the late Queen Elizabeth II's private royal seal, a symbol guarded for decades, touched only under the strictest authority. What appeared to be a dispute over protocol was something far more personal. It was a boundary, publicly unspoken but privately unmistakable, and Camilla understood exactly what it meant. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles sat with the authorization paper before him, reading the final line twice before reaching for his pen. The private royal seal, a personal mark used to authenticate the late monarch's instructions, carried more than administrative weight. It represented Elizabeth's judgment, her confidence, and the line separating inherited duty from influence gained through marriage. Whoever controlled it could make an order appear to carry the authority of a dead queen. The king signed without hesitation. Then he placed the pen down and looked toward his private secretary. "This leaves the room tonight," he said. His voice never rose. That calmness made the command feel harsher than anger, because everyone present understood the decision had moved beyond debate. The seal would be returned to the royal archives, the secure collection where historic crown records and objects are preserved, and no one could access it again without written permission from the monarch. Camilla received the order while reviewing papers for a charitable appointment. An aide approached the table, lifted the seal case, and held it against his chest as though another second beside her might violate the instruction. The queen consort did not shout. She only asked whether Charles had approved the restriction personally. The aide answered yes, and her face tightened before she turned away. Charles felt no victory. After the officials departed, he remained beside the empty cabinet, aware that protecting his mother's legacy had forced him to humiliate his wife inside the institution they were expected to defend together. Yet the order contained one disturbing silence. It never explained what Camilla had planned to authorize. William learned the truth before the wider household. The prince listened, then told his father that recovering the seal was not enough. Every document carrying its impression had to be traced. When archivists opened the register, they found an instruction stamped 3 days earlier, one no official remembered approving. The seal had left Camilla's hands, but that document was still moving through the palace, and the name attached to it promised a far more dangerous confrontation. For years, Charles and Camilla had survived scandal, rejection, and the relentless weight of public judgment. Yet nothing had prepared them for a conflict shaped by a woman who was no longer alive. Queen Elizabeth's seal had become a silent presence between husband and wife, forcing each to confront a painful question. Was Camilla protecting the crown beside Charles, or slowly stepping into spaces his mother had deliberately kept beyond her reach? Camilla stood inside her private sitting room as an archivist lowered the seal case into a padded security container. The private royal seal was the late monarch's personal mark, used to confirm that an instruction truly carried her authority. It was not merely valuable. It represented judgment, trust, and a boundary that Elizabeth had guarded throughout her reign. Camilla reached toward the case, then stopped before her fingers touched the lid. The queen consort asked the official to leave. When the door closed, she remained beside the empty table, staring at the space where the object had rested only moments earlier. Years of service suddenly felt reduced to one painful message. She could stand beside the sovereign, attend state occasions, and carry out public duties. Yet the monarchy still considered some symbols beyond her reach. Charles entered later that evening, knowing anger would be easier than silence. The king saw the strain in her face, but he did not soften the decision. Camilla asked whether he truly believed she had deliberately misused the seal. He answered carefully. Intention was no longer the only question. Appearance mattered. Precedent mattered. Trust mattered most of all. Camilla felt every word like a quiet accusation. She reminded him that she had spent years defending his reign while being compared with women she could never replace. Charles did not deny her suffering. He told her that the pain surrounding her position was exactly why Elizabeth's authority could never be borrowed to strengthen it. Neither raised a voice, but the room seemed to divide around them. William discovered the sealed instruction before the argument had fully settled. The Queen's Commonwealth Trust, a charity created to support young leaders across Commonwealth nations, stood at the center of the document. It proposed moving temporary appointment powers away from Catherine and placing them under Camilla's household. The prince immediately understood the danger. The change would not simply alter one charity, it would shift influence before Catherine could object, and make that shift appear protected by Elizabeth's approval. Anne was contacted next, because her mother had once spoken to her directly about the seal. The Princess Royal recalled the warning clearly. It must never replace the reigning monarch's consent. She agreed to meet Charles, but first demanded the original instruction. Anne read the margin once. Then again. Her expression hardened when she recognized the handwriting. The argument was no longer simply between husband and wife. Someone else had helped move Elizabeth's authority into Camilla's hands, and the name in that margin was about to turn private pain into open confrontation. The palace had not reached this crisis through whispers alone. There had been a moment specific, witnessed, and impossible to dismiss, when Charles first realized that his mother's private authority was being used to settle a modern royal dispute. It happened during a closed patronage ceremony at Clarence House, when a document appeared bearing Elizabeth's seal, and Camilla presented it as evidence that the late Queen had already approved a transfer of power. Camilla had gathered the trustees 10 days before the restriction, determined to settle the future leadership of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust. The trust was a royal charity supporting young leaders across Commonwealth nations, and control over its appointments carried influence far beyond one office. Catherine had been expected to take a larger role within William's plan for the next generation. The memorandum threatened to end that path before it had properly begun. Charles entered after the paper had already reached the table. The king saw the wax impression immediately, lifted the memorandum without sitting, and looked from one face to another. No trustee spoke. No advisor moved. Then he asked who had authorized the use of his mother's seal. Camilla met his stare. "It was already available to me," she said. The answer changed the room. Charles understood that rejecting the document in front of everyone would expose a fracture inside his marriage. Yet accepting it would allow Elizabeth's name to force an outcome he had never approved. The monarch folded the memorandum once, placed it beneath his hand, and ended the ceremony without confirming the transfer. Camilla followed him into the adjoining room before the advisors could leave. The queen consort insisted she had been protecting continuity, not claiming power. Charles asked why she had not brought the proposal to him for his signature. She tried to answer, then stopped. Her silence said what words could not. Elizabeth's seal carried an authority the trustees would hesitate to challenge, while the reigning king might still be persuaded, delayed, or opposed. Anne examined the wax later that evening. The Princess Royal noticed a shallow fracture running along one edge, a flaw too precise to ignore. A detachable matrix was an older removable stamp used to press a royal seal into wax, and this impression had come from such a piece, not from the secured ceremonial stamp recorded in the household register. Anne turned next to the handwritten note beside the signature. She recognized the writing of a senior advisor who had once worked inside Elizabeth's private office. The message was brief: proceed before the family review. The meaning was brutal. Someone had wanted the transfer completed before William and Catherine could object. Charles summoned Camilla that night. The king placed the damaged impression and the note between them. The ceremony had exposed the misuse, but the closed-door meeting would determine whether the marriage itself could survive the answer. When Charles and Camilla finally faced one another, there were no aides to absorb the tension, and no officials to translate emotion into protocol. Between them lay the sealed memorandum, the damaged wax impression, and decades of shared history. Charles did not begin by asking who opened the cabinet. He began with the accusation that mattered most. She had used his mother's name to pressure him into approving something he had never accepted. Charles placed the memorandum in front of her and asked why Elizabeth's seal appeared on a document created after the late Queen's death. A memorandum was a formal written record used to set out decisions or instructions, and this one carried the impression of authority it did not truly possess. The king's words left no room for excuses. He was no longer treating the matter as a mistake in household procedure. Camilla held his gaze and said the proposal came from conversations during Elizabeth's final years. The queen consort insisted the seal had been used to confirm continuity, not invent consent. Senior advisors, she argued, believed the late monarch would have supported the transfer. Charles listened, but the explanation only deepened the wound. Belief was not permission. Memory was not approval. The king pushed the document across the table. "Then you should have brought it to me." Camilla did not touch it. After several seconds, she removed the royal brooch from her coat and placed it beside the memorandum. A royal brooch was more than jewelry in this setting. It marked public duty and belonging. By setting it down, she turned an argument about procedure into a statement about her place in the family. Camilla accused him of defending Elizabeth's memory more fiercely than he had ever defended her position. Charles answered that his mother could no longer speak for herself, while she was alive and fully capable of asking permission. The distinction struck hard. The queen consort looked away, shaken by the suggestion that her loyalty could never outweigh the shadow of a dead monarch. Charles admitted he felt betrayed, not because she wanted influence, but because she had chosen a symbol he could not challenge publicly, without appearing to reject his mother. Camilla heard something deeper in those words. Even after years beside him, Elizabeth's absence still seemed more powerful than her presence. The king then pointed to the handwriting beside the signature. It belonged to Sir Jonathan Vale, a retired private secretary with access to restricted archival material. Charles asked whether she had met him before the ceremony. Camilla hesitated. Then she admitted Vale had brought the detachable seal matrix to her residence and claimed Elizabeth had approved similar continuity measures. She denied ordering its removal, but accepted that she allowed the document to be stamped. Charles told her Vale had already been summoned. Camilla had admitted allowing the seal to be used, but the man who carried it into the room still held the most dangerous version of the truth. Royal power rarely moves through shouting. It advances through locked folders, carefully phrased advice, and decisions made by people who understand that one sentence can alter a reign. Charles may have signed the restriction, but he did not reach it alone. William, Anne, and the keeper of the royal archives each placed a different truth before him, forcing the king to choose between protecting his marriage and protecting the credibility of the crown. William spoke first. The prince warned that the seal threatened the future reign as much as the present one. If documents carrying Elizabeth's mark could be accepted without proof, anyone inside the household could use her memory to influence appointments, property decisions, or succession planning. Succession planning meant the preparation of roles and authority for the next reign, and any false instruction could shape that future before the rightful monarch had spoken. Anne carried the heavier truth. The Princess Royal recalled a private conversation with her mother, in which Elizabeth had explained that the seal could confirm personal instructions only during her lifetime. After her death, it was to become a historical object, preserved but never used as a continuing source of approval. She remembered the words clearly, because the monarch had repeated them. Charles listened without interruption. Then the king asked whether their mother had ever made an exception for Camilla. Anne answered no. Her voice softened, but her judgment did not. She told her brother that protecting his wife could not require surrendering the truth about Elizabeth's wishes. William placed a list of documents on the desk. The future king circled the Commonwealth Trust Memorandum and 2 household letters carrying similar impressions. He told his father the problem had already moved beyond one ceremony. Then he stepped back and waited, refusing to turn the moment into pressure. Charles felt cornered anyway. His son and sister appeared united against the queen consort, and the monarch resented the shape of that alliance. Yet both had come privately. Neither had tried to shame Camilla before the household. Their restraint forced him to confront a darker possibility. Loyalty to his wife had begun to look like weakness inside the institution. Anne expressed sympathy, but she refused to excuse the decision. She reminded Charles that acceptance into the family did not include ownership of Elizabeth's authority. The king understood that she was defending their mother, but also protecting him from future accusations that he had allowed history to be rewritten. The archivist delivered the final proof through a documented security report. Sir Jonathan Vale had signed out a restoration box under a false conservation request. The box contained the detachable matrix, and records showed it was delivered directly to Camilla's residence. Charles signed a second order suspending Vale's palace access and authorizing a review of every marked document. Then an aide entered with fresh news. Camilla had dismissed 2 members of her household without explanation. The king had secured the seal, but those dismissals suggested fear was spreading through everyone who had helped place it in her hands. By the following morning, the palace looked unchanged. Ceremonies continued. Cars arrived, and official correspondence moved through familiar corridors. Behind those routines, however, Camilla's authority was shrinking hour by hour. Documents were recalled, staff were questioned, and invitations once handled by her office were redirected elsewhere. The restriction was no longer a private rebuke. It had become a new reality, visible in every door that stopped opening. Camilla entered her morning briefing, expecting the usual red document box beside her chair. It was gone. The box was normally used to carry confidential royal papers securely between offices, and its absence carried a message no one needed to explain. When she asked where it had been taken, an aide answered that all archival material had been recalled for review. The queen consort sat down slowly. She dismissed the room, waited until the door closed, then tore the briefing schedule in half. Anger came first. Humiliation followed. Servants who once acted immediately on her instructions now paused for secondary approval, and every hesitation felt like a judgment on her place inside the monarchy. The consequences spread quickly. All correspondence issued by Camilla's household during the previous 6 months went under review. Instructions linked to the Queen's Commonwealth Trust were suspended, while temporary control returned to a joint committee overseen by Charles and William. The committee was a small decision-making group, created to prevent any one household from acting alone during the investigation. Charles visited after learning that 2 staff members had been dismissed. The king asked why they had been removed. Camilla replied that both had acted without proper authorization. He studied her before asking the question she feared most. Was she punishing misconduct or removing witnesses? Camilla refused to answer. Her silence widened the fracture between them. William received the next blow through a documented account sent by one of the dismissed aides. The prince opened an earlier draft of the memorandum and immediately noticed what was missing. It contained no reference to Elizabeth's wishes, no claim of continuity, and no reason for using her seal. Those details appeared only after Sir Jonathan Vale became involved. The aide revealed more. Camilla had first rejected the idea of stamping the document. She changed her mind after being warned that Catherine's growing role would permanently reduce her influence and leave her with ceremony but little control. The queen consort had not acted in a sudden moment of confusion. Fear had worked on her slowly, until ambition began to feel like survival. William understood the danger. Punishment alone would never solve what had driven her. The future king asked to meet Camilla without aides, lawyers, or prepared statements. Charles agreed reluctantly, hoping his son might reach the wound beneath the defiance. The institution had punished Camilla's decision, but only William was prepared to confront the insecurity that had driven her to make it. William did not enter Camilla's room as the future king, and she did not receive him as the queen consort. For 1 hour, they met without secretaries, red boxes, titles, or prepared statements. What passed between them was more difficult than accusation because it required honesty. He had come to protect Catherine's future role, but he also understood the fear of living beside a beloved royal figure whose memory seemed impossible to equal. William told her he had not come to demand an apology. The prince wanted to understand why she believed Elizabeth's authority was necessary when she already possessed influence through her marriage, public work, and closeness to the sovereign. Royal influence meant the ability to shape decisions without holding direct constitutional power, and Camilla knew how quickly that kind of influence could disappear. Camilla answered without defiance. She said power built on Charles's affection felt fragile, because the monarchy was already turning toward William and Catherine. The queen consort feared that everything she had endured would end with her being remembered as a controversial interruption between 2 more admired generations. William noticed no staff had entered and poured the tea himself. He placed a cup before her, then waited. Camilla looked down and admitted that Elizabeth had never trusted her with the seal. Then using it could never make that trust real, the prince said. Camilla did not argue. She confessed that Catherine's growing popularity had stirred something bitter inside her. The Princess of Wales had received warmth, sympathy, and public confidence without carrying the same history of hostility. William defended his wife, but he did not attack the woman sitting opposite him. He told Camilla that Catherine's role could not be weakened to repair wounds created before she entered the family. The future king then spoke about his own burden. He understood what it meant to live beneath the memory of a parent, and how easily love for someone absent could overpower those still living. Yet honoring the dead, he said, could never mean falsely speaking in their name. Camilla reached into a private folder and removed a letter from Sir Jonathan Vale. The documented message promised that using the seal would make the trust transfer impossible to reverse. Vale had understood the pressure the symbol would create. He had encouraged her to exploit it. Camilla handed the letter across the table voluntarily. She agreed to give Charles a complete account and finally stopped calling the memorandum continuity. It had been an attempt to protect her position through authority that did not belong to her. Before William left, she asked whether the king would ever trust her again. The prince answered quietly. Trust would depend on what she did publicly, not what she said privately. Camilla remained alone and began writing the statement that would define the final outcome. The struggle changed when she surrendered the evidence, but the palace still had to decide how much of its private rupture the world would be allowed to see. The palace hoped to release a narrow statement about archival procedure. The world understood something larger immediately. Within hours, the missing seal became a symbol of trust, legitimacy, and the limits of royal marriage. Commentators debated constitutional boundaries. Crowds gathered outside royal gates, and one photograph, Camilla leaving a service without Charles beside her, captured the emotional reality more powerfully than any carefully drafted announcement. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Elizabeth's private seal had been permanently secured inside the royal archives. The royal archives were the protected collection where historic documents, personal papers, and important objects from past reigns were preserved. No document created after the late monarch's death could legally carry its impression, and every earlier letter connected to Sir Jonathan Vale would now be reviewed. Camilla released her own statement through a documented palace announcement. The Queen Consort accepted responsibility for allowing the seal to be used on the Commonwealth Trust memorandum. She admitted that fear of losing influence had pushed her across a boundary between honoring Elizabeth's legacy and claiming authority the late monarch had never given her. The next morning, one newspaper captured the crisis with brutal simplicity. Its front page showed the locked crimson seal case beneath the headline, "The line she could not cross." The image spread quickly, because it reduced a complicated royal dispute to one unmistakable truth. Ambition had reached a boundary that legitimacy would not permit it to cross. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered near the gates as the statement played across phones and portable radios. One elderly woman placed white flowers beneath a photograph of Elizabeth. Younger visitors stood nearby reading Camilla's apology in silence. Grief for the past and judgment of the present met in a single public moment. Camilla faced the cameras later that day after a scheduled church service. She left alone while Charles remained inside speaking privately with Anne. The Queen Consort paused beside the waiting car before entering, and that brief hesitation became the detail repeated across every broadcast. She appeared composed, but the king's absence beside her made the separation impossible to ignore. William watched the coverage with Catherine. The prince feared that accountability was turning into cruelty. His wife agreed that the truth had to remain public, but she warned that humiliation would only deepen the family's wounds. Together, they instructed palace officials to stop anonymous briefings that described Camilla as an enemy of the crown. Charles then made his final public choice. The king rejected demands to remove her title, separating misuse of the seal from banishment from the marriage or monarchy. He scheduled one private family gathering beside the permanent display. Camilla was invited, but the seal would never belong to her again. Public judgment had delivered its blow. Now the family had to decide whether that sealed boundary would destroy their unity or finally make honest unity possible. The crisis ended not with a resignation, a banishment, or another dramatic order, but with the return of a small object to the place where it belonged. In the royal archives, Charles, Camilla, William, Catherine, and Anne stood before the secured display containing Elizabeth's private seal. No one pretended the damage had vanished. Yet for the first time, the family faced the truth without borrowed authority, secret memoranda, or the protection of ceremonial language. Charles delivered the final decision in a calm voice. The private seal would be permanently retired, meaning it would remain preserved as a historic object, but could never again approve correspondence, patronage appointments, household instructions, or claims about what the late queen might have wanted. The king made the boundary absolute. Elizabeth's reign had ended, and no one could continue speaking through her authority. The monarch then canceled the proposed Commonwealth Trust transfer. The trust was a royal charity supporting young leaders across Commonwealth nations, and control of its appointments carried real influence over the monarchy's future work. Catherine would keep her developing role, while Camilla could remain involved only through clearly defined duties approved by the reigning sovereign. Every document created through the unauthorized process was declared invalid. Camilla approached the secured display carrying Sir Jonathan Vale's letter. The Queen Consort placed it inside an evidence folder held by the archivist, then moved her hand toward the glass before stopping. She did not touch it. Charles stepped beside her, not because forgiveness was complete, but because she had finally accepted the line she once tried to cross. The king told her that trust would return through consistent actions, not promises. Camilla admitted that fear of becoming irrelevant had driven her toward authority she had never earned. Their marriage survived, but neither pretended the betrayal had been small. Love remained, so did consequence. William felt the future shift back into place. The prince understood that the next reign would not be controlled by false memories of the past. Catherine felt no triumph. She knew her role had been protected, because service must come through responsibility, not symbolic manipulation. Anne watched the cabinet being locked. The Princess Royal did not celebrate Camilla's humiliation. She simply felt relief that her mother's voice could no longer be borrowed by anyone. Charles had proved something larger than one family dispute. Marriage to the sovereign did not grant ownership of every royal symbol. Compassion without boundaries would weaken the crown. Punishment without compassion would destroy the family. Camilla left beside Charles, but the seal remained behind them. The seal had nearly become a weapon in a struggle over royal influence. By taking it away, Charles protected his mother's legacy, defended his son's future, and reminded the monarchy that no one can possess the authority of a reign that has already ended. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.